Please pardon the appearance of my hair. I don't know what to do with my bangs and they're driving me crazy. So now I look like a woolly mammoth, but at least now I know what I'd look like if I was in Ice Age. But other than my hair situation, I am back with a new video and I'm going to talk about my favorite books that I have read in 2025 so far. I only have 4 books, so I will not terrorize anyone with like an hour-long video. Guaranteed this video will probably still be on the longer side because I have no stopping point in my brain, but I have only condensed it down to 4 books. It was originally 6, so you're welcome. The first book that I wanted to talk about is The Cliff by Manan Dabe. This is a graphic novel about 2 young girls, I believe they're in middle school or at least freshmen in high school, who make a suicide pact to one day jump off of a cliff together. One of the girls is being bullied and the other girl is actually the bully. It is a much darker graphic novel than I have read in the past. The illustrations are very beautiful, but also very, very different from what I'm used to. I usually read graphic novels that have illustrations that are more childlike, more cutesy, more cartoonish, but this one feels more mature, and the story is very mature as well. Definitely need some trigger warnings if you end up reading this book, but I really loved it. The reason why I enjoyed it so much is because I can closely relate to how these girls are feeling. That, you know, as young girls we just go through so many weird hormones and situations with friends and with boys and with all kinds, and schooling as well, and it can make people feel very depressed and very lonely and isolated. So I really enjoyed this novel, and I think it is very special because I closely relate to these characters, and I think that just with the addition of the illustration, it adds so much to the story, it adds so much feeling to the graphic novel. The next book I have is The Dark Side of Skin by Jefferson Tenorio. This was translated by Bruna Dantas Lobato. I'm pretty sure it was translated only in 2023, so it's quite recent. This is about a narrator who is basically piecing together the lives of his parents, Enrique and Martha, I'm pretty sure his mother's name was. They were the only 2 black people in their cities in Brazil. If you want to read a book about race relations in Brazil, this is definitely the perfect book, but it's also the perfect book because not only are you seeing the hardships that black men go through in Brazil, dealing with colorism and racism, but also you're seeing what black women go through as well. I think that is kind of lacking in literature, when it's not completely focused on like a black woman's story, when they're kind of another character or side character or another main character. Their story isn't delved into as deeply as The Dark Side of Skin does for Martha, and I really love that because it's just as important to talk about race as well as gender and how that affects how people treat you in society. Of course, intersectionality is always important to discuss in any novel, and I feel like Tenorio does such an incredible job. He creates these incredibly well-rounded, complicated, and layered characters. Enrique and Martha are not written as these like perfect humans overcoming these hardships. I feel like he puts these characters' flaws on the forefront and shows you how complicated they are and how dysfunctional they are, how dysfunctional their relationship, their marriage is. But it's just, you can't really, like, there is no good or bad person in any situation. It's just that they are themselves, they're human, they make so many mistakes, they are contradictive of themselves and what they believe and what they think. They're so different from one another, and all of that just makes them feel incredibly human. There is not one point where I'm reading about them where I feel like I'm reading a fictional character. It just feels like I'm reading about a human, another human being. I feel like I'm watching a documentary. Great, beautiful story about race relations in modern Brazil, systematic racism, and how deeply that affects Black people in Brazil. I highly recommend this book. It is so beautiful, and I think a lot of people, I've seen reviews, and I feel like a good amount of people have said that they feel like this is somewhat of a tragedy, that it's a very depressing story, but I don't see it as that. I don't think that was Tenorio's point that he wanted to get across. Like, that's not the kind of story that he was writing, it feels like to me. Although there are tragic things that happen in this story, there is also optimism and a little bit of hope. And I think the fact that the base of the plot is the narrator, who is Enrique and Martha's son, trying to piece their lives together, there is that hope of, even after everything, someone is there that loves them and is cherishing them and is trying to put their life and memory together as a story. And I think that is beautiful. The next book is the wonderful, the amazing, and the incredible, beautiful, brilliant 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is a masterpiece, and I say that with so much confidence. The story is about Macondo, which is an imaginary town, and the founding family, the Buendias. You follow through 5 generations of the Buendia family, and you see the rise and fall of the town as well as the family. This book is regarded as magical realism, but it is also regarded as one of Latin America's greatest piece of literature and history, which kind of begs the question of how can a magical book also be a book about history? And the answer is literature. That is the beauty and the power of novels. They can combine 2 very different things and create something coherent and powerful and moving, just as Garcia Marquez has done with 100 Years of Solitude. He combines myth and reality and intertwines them, which in turn makes myth this kind of vehicle, or like this train, if you want to think about it, that delivers or transmits history to the readers in a engaging and easily digestible way. He makes these big mythological events happen, and these like supernatural characters come into the story, and it is so easily incorporated into the story along with pieces of history that actually occurred in Latin America, specifically Colombia, that when you read them, it doesn't beg the question of, did this really happen? Like, did this character really go through this? Is this character like realistic or whatever? It begs more of the question of, what is this event, what is this character trying to tell me? Like, what is the underbelly of this event? What is the truth behind this part of the story? It's not just, that's the thing that like fiction can do, these like fantasy or magical realism novels can do, that historical literature can't really do, and that is getting to the core, getting the underbelly, the real dirty truth of what happened in an event, because you show the heart through magic, if any of that makes sense. Similar to the book The Master and the Margarita, that was kind of like a commentary on Stalin's reign. This is of political commentary and historical retelling of what was happening during the time in Colombia. And although it does not read like a textbook, you still get all of that information, like I said, because of the way that he structures and writes this novel. And I think that that is amazing. It reminds me of how, like, there's always this argument for centuries, you know, is art political? Can art be political? And the answer will always be yes. Any form of art has always been political, always will be, because politics is nothing but creating a narrative. When people run for mayor, for president, for, you know, their city council, they are campaigning. They make campaign posts. They have tours. They're creating over months this narrative for their life and for their policies. And narratives are a form of art, and narratives are a central part to novels. And so it is so incredible that Gabriel Garcia can talk politics, but not in a textbook way, not in a like super obvious way. In this book, he does it in a fun, magical, mythical way that engages the reader and that also intrigues them into the deeper meaning of why would this character act like this, why would this character say like that. You start to like think outside of the novel, have these conversations with yourself, and I love a book that can do that. There's just so much beauty hidden within these words. The final book I'm going to talk about will now take up the remaining 45 minutes of this video because I have so much to say. So much to say. I have a Google Doc on this book and the adaptation. I'm talking about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. The incredible novel that this is has made me become obsessed, and it has infected every corner of my brain. So I have a lot to say. So I apologize in advance, but you're in for a very, very long, probably most likely incoherent rant. The Haunting of Hill House, if you didn't already know, is very different from the plot of its TV show adaptation, which I also highly recommend. The novel is about Dr. Montague, who is an occult scholar. He studies the supernatural, and he is looking for solid evidence of supernatural. So he rents out for the summer Hill House, which is supposed to be very haunted, and he invites 3 other people to reside with him. He's done a lot of research on these people, and he believes that because of certain events that have occurred in their childhood, they will bring out the supernatural abilities of the house. One of them is Luke. Technically, Luke was not invited. He has to be there because he is actually the heir to Hill House, so a family member has to be present while they stay there for the summer. Then he invites Theodora. Theodora is a very independent, bold, carefree lesbian who kind of takes this whole residing in a haunted house as like fun for the summer. And Luke is also very carefree, and he's a very chill and kind guy. And then we have our main character, Eleanor. Eleanor is the complete opposite of all the other characters. Eleanor is timid, she is quite unstable, and she is very, very lonely. She used to be the sole caretaker of her mother until her mother passed away, and now she lives in her sister's house with her family, but she does not get along with her sister at all. And so she takes this opportunity to reside in Hill House for the summer as like an opportunity to meet new people and kind of become her own person, because for so long she was just known as the woman who took care of her mom. She has no friends, no romantic relationships. She is just completely isolated on her own little island in her brain. So when she first arrives to Hill House, She gets along with everyone really well. Everyone gets along with one another. They form a good bond with one another. They enjoy each other's presence. And she really connects with Theodora. They start to form a very strong friendship. Borderline relationship. There is definitely romantic tension between Theodora and Eleanor, and I think that is what also adds to what happens later in the novel, which is the longer that Eleanor stays at the house, the more mentally unstable she becomes. She becomes a lot more possessive of Theodora, obsessive. She becomes paranoid. She's way too clingy, way too needy, because the more time she spends with Theodora specifically, the more codependent she becomes. And of course, it just everything starts to unravel the longer that they all stay at Hill House. Now, my analysis is 10 pages deep. It's a Google Doc deep, guys. There's a whole thing that I could say, but what I really want to focus on is the mental illness aspect of this novel, which I think is probably the most prevalent and the most well-known theme of this book, which is Eleanor's mental state. She is already very lonely when she first arrives to the house, and when you invite a very, very lonely person who has no sense of identity, no sense of community, no sense of self, and you become her best friend, she is going to become, of course, very codependent on you in a very unhealthy way, because now she is latched on to what is essentially a lifeline to her. Eleanor is a great character study. She is someone who has constantly had to look after someone else, her mother, and no one has ever really cared for her. And so to all of a sudden have three people, Dr. Montauk, Luke, and Theodora, be so friendly and kind to her, of course she's going to develop something unhealthy, because she doesn't know how else to react to these people, to treat these people. She just immediately gets that hit of serotonin and then latches onto them. What I really love as well is that Eleanor is the narrator of the book, but again, as you progress, she becomes very unreliable. All of a sudden, we can't tell if Luke and Theodora and Dr. Montauk are really these bad people as she's depicting, or is it just all in her head because she is now having a hard time differentiating reality versus supernatural, versus magic and fantasy, what she's made up in her head. And that, of course, makes the book so much more interesting. I love unreliable narrators, and I love just the more you get to know Eleanor, the more you see how scared she is. It's not just a terror because they're in a haunted house. It's a terror of like, she doesn't know herself. She has no identity outside of being used to being a caretaker. She has no friends, a community to show her support and love. And so you see her just floating around trying to find these thin threads to keep her grounded. And it is just so intriguing to see her do that. I have seen some analysis and reviews where people think that nothing actually scary happens in the house, like the house is just a regular house, but that the hauntings are more of a huge metaphor for mental illness. And I do think I do agree with that. But I think that because this is a work of fiction, we can allow ourselves to believe that this house is haunted. I do believe that the scary things that happen in this book did occur, while simultaneously being kind of reflections of Eleanor's breaking mind. I think that both the magic and reality, the metaphors can exist at once, similar to 100 Years of Solitude. I don't think that we have to separate this and say that Haunting of Hill House is completely void of anything supernatural. I don't think that at all. So I guess that's all I have to say about this for now. I'm probably gonna go back to my Google Doc. I keep saying Google Doc, but I literally have a Google Doc to discuss this book because there's so much going up on here. I read this book months ago and I'm still thinking every day, every night about it and finding new things and new questions. And it's incredible. I love this book. It is a great, spooky, gothic read with a lot of emotion to it, and I think that everyone should read this. Even if you're a scaredy cat like me, I got through this. I also got to the TV show, which was a huge success for me. But yes, this book is just so incredible and I love it so much. These are the 4 books that I just discussed, the 4 books that I loved. And I'm so excited to finish out 2025 with maybe 4+ more books that I will love. And of course I will have a video about those later on. But before I end this video, I do want to talk and mention that I will be leaving links and information that will be helpful for those who are affected by ICE, who may need lawyers, or just want to read up on how to help, protect against ICE agents, ICE vehicles. I will have links down below in the description box. Please check them out. Please stay as informed as you can. It is a very turbulent and scary time right now, and I just want to help as much as I can. So please check out the links. I will provide them in the description box. I grew up in a city and still live in a city that is mostly immigrants. The majority of the population that I live in is made up of Hispanics and Latinos, and I feel like to turn a blind eye or act ignorant of how they are being treated right now is sick and a deep betrayal. This is the community that I grew up in, and these are the people that surround me day to day, and I cannot just turn my back on them. I can't even imagine how hard and terrifying it is for everyone who is being deported, regardless if they are a citizen or not. The fact that that is even happening is cruel beyond any means. I think we are just in a very pivotal point in society. There is a big chance for huge positive change, but we need to step up no matter who you are. If you're personally affected or you're an ally or you're whatever it is, we need to step up as a community for one another to make sure that we are changing society for good. Again, the links will be in the description box. I hope that everyone can be as safe as possible and do as much as they can to help others. I promise you that if you just allow some love and kindness and show appreciation for those around you, regardless if you know them or not, I promise you their life will be so much better. So please check the links in the description box, and please stay safe. And I hope that in these troubling times you are finding things that can still bring you joy, that you have people around you that you love and who love you and show you support and aid when you need help. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.